I'm live. Look at that. So let's see if I can share this out real quick and then we'll switch the camera around and get it in focus and all that sort of fun stuff. Well, that's interesting. Bear with me here. I'm going to mute the microphone for a minute. Okay, we're back. That wasn't so hard. So, I forgot my drink. Let me get that. Be right back. Don't panic. Okay, one of these days, I'm going to work out how to use this new. Let me come back here. I'm going to work out how to use this new app that is on YouTube. It's really annoying, and I can't seem to see anything that goes on in the on the YouTube channel while I'm here. So it's very frustrating. So I don't know if anyone's joined really, and can't see the live action like updates and stuff like that on the PC in the other room. So it's all a little bit goofy. But salute. I had a little bit of water with that. It's it needs it. It's a 10-year Michter's rye. Very nice. So gonna flip the camera. Let's talk about our game. Our game here, and what's what's next? Let's see what happens. So we got to the point where I posted a video a couple of days ago and I said, hey, look, what do you think? Should we stop? It's the end of the German turn at turn 13. Let's run through the Soviet turn. The Soviets moved the rest of the units that were in the backfield here. This is Mogilev, so that's Orsha and Vitebsk up there. And then Rogachev is down here. Moved their forces up, really built some good defenses. But I did have one little opportunity right here where this stack was not super well defended, but we are coming across the river and it was going to get brutal. And there was 2, 3, 4, 6 factors defending, and I ended up with a 3-2 attack. And with the reaction, I got to, well, I had the artillery in here, but net of all the reaction and all that sort of business, these guys couldn't quite make it. They were back here. I was starting to move them up, then realized that they couldn't make it. Well, maybe they were here actually, because it was 1.5 movement points. They could move 1.5, yeah. They didn't have to pay zone of control because it's a major river. So, and you can't really see crap because I've got it on like mega zoomed out. Bear with me while we zoom in. So we had this opportunity here to attack. It ended up being, I think, a 1-to-1 attack. It was +2 to have because of no supplies. So it ended up being actually a no result. I think is, where's my little list of notes? Hang on a second. Yeah. Yeah, no results. And so in actual fact, we wouldn't have lost these two guys here. When I did the original attack, I resolved it at 1-2 and I forgot to do the 3-2 because I forgot to do the reaction mode, reaction for the Soviets. So they got to react, and the end result was a no result. So without being able to cross here, this little guy right there, right? Without being able to cross here into this hex, that really put an end to any efforts here. I looked at the odds of trying to get this hex. Super hard. There's some tough guys in there. I can't use these things right-handed. I got 2, 3, 3. That's 8 in there with a +1. Would have been a +3. Even with an engineering unit, it still would have been a +2. We had the city and all that sort of stuff. So messy. You probably can't see that. Sorry about that. But messy situation. So, all in all, fun stuff. Here's where I'm coming at the situation with. I'm just trying to zoom out, and I'm really sorry about the control. I've got to use my fingers to do this. There's no dials. There's no high-end equipment. There's just me and my little phone and a little $2.99 stand. So if you don't like it, I'm sorry. Here's the thing with this game. As I'm playing this, and as I was playing Army Group South, I played the campaign by myself. I played opposed. We played a small scenario. I think it was, what was it? I don't know, Minsk or something. And then we played the campaign game. I played that opposed. There were some rules errors on both sides there. But nevertheless, the end result was, I was thinking all the way through that and all the way through this. Oh, look, the heater went off. Not that I actually really need it, because it's 40 degrees outside, and I'm sure you guys have much colder temperatures probably where you are. But I kept thinking that wouldn't it be interesting to play, 3 or 4 or 5 of these modules all put together. So if you can imagine this Army Group South below it, Army North above it, if you could imagine all of that put together and, get a feel for the entire campaign. And there are just a number of factors that led me to believe that that's probably something I would not enjoy doing. I wouldn't enjoy the physical experience of doing that, and I don't know that I would enjoy the gameplay experience on Vassal either necessarily. While the challenge of doing as well as or better than the Soviets or the Germans, as the case may be, depending on which side you're on, it's got lots of potential for a beatdown for the Soviets, and not a lot of opportunity to have a lot of fun with it, just in terms of counterattacking and things like that. Maybe around turn 40 or 30 or something crazy happens, and you get to have some fun experiences. But the system is good. The system is great, and if you're going to play a 2, 3, or 4 map game, hell, maybe even an 8 map game, I can imagine the turns play relatively fast if you are okay with not micromanaging supply. The turns will play fast if you're not going to min-max the shit out of everything. And the turns will play fast primarily because combat is very elegant and simple. So there's not a lot of dicking around. There's a small handful of DRMs, some for terrain, some for divisional bonuses and surrounding the unit and all this sort of stuff, having engineers, all this sort of straightforward stuff. It's not the level of granularity that folks want. If you want to play GOS at this scale, God bless you. You go do that. That's your thing. It would take you, longer to play the equivalent scale game with GOS than the real war took, I think. So while GOS will give you, and GOS is the the acronym stands for now. I can't believe I can't remember it right off the top of my head. It's the decision games, Wacht am Rhein, and wow, I'm drawing a complete blank. I've got two of the games, Herken Forest, and of course Atlantic Wall, things like that. That system, which looks fabulously detailed, it scale up to this sort of scale. And I don't think you want to. I don't think you want to be that granular with divisions and brigades. And I mean, there are battalions of stuff here, right? So I don't know that you want to be that granular with this this sort of stuff. So it's more a case of picking and choosing what you want to deal with and how much effort you want to put in, which is one of the reasons I look at this kind of in the sort of a zoomed in version of Europa, where combat is relatively straightforward, but Europa has more math, right? Because we're doing fractions of fifths and bits and pieces and comparing ratios of 80 gun units to tank units with air and massive air battles being fought out, and it's all, you'll want it to feel like it's real, but it's not really real, right? It's just it's an approximation of what's going on. So this game gives you the sensation of the big meaty infantry divisions that are 7 attack, 9 defense like these guys, and 8, 9, 5s. And they've got a little bit of robustness to them in that they can ably defend themselves, and they can support an attack. Then you've got smaller units like the motorized regiments and the tank divisions that have their capabilities. They're 7.57s and 3.37s, and they can do infiltration movement, and they can do all sorts of little nifty things, and they give you DRMs on your combat. And you get a feel for what was probably going on versus what absolutely was going on. And one of the questions I get a lot of the time is, well, how does it compare to OCS? And, it doesn't. OCS is a very different and discrete system, and it is really not to be compared because, A, it's dealing with 2 different time periods. I know this runs up to Smolensk and on into Operation Typhoon, but the game structure is still stuck with that Soviet asynchronous combat system where you can't really get infantry into the battle very often, just because. And for the Soviets, mechanized units move first, and then you declare combat, and then the infantry move, and then so that ain't going to work, right? You're not going to get a lot of infantry into the battle, and the infantry is what have most of the punching power in this game. So I'm just sorting pieces while we talk here because I've got to pack this little sucker up. So I'm putting all the little yellow barred units have no zone of control. So I thought that, whoa, hey now, look at that zooming, crazy times. Whatever, that was probably disconcerting. And that's not the case. So the game system is equal, then not equal. The play sequence is equal or balanced or symmetrical in the OCS solution. So their approach is, hey, everybody gets to fight, everybody gets to move, everybody gets to do the exploit, everyone has to pay for supply, and that's how they put some sort of tethers around the sort of what I think are relatively overpowered German units. But nevertheless, that is what it is. Seems like most games these days have overpowered units, which is one of the things I was hoping that get a few people online tonight. But with the short notice, as usual, and my lack of familiarity with the YouTube app, keeps changing every time every time I update my phone or update my apps. There's some new wrinkle to the exercise, so. I wanted to ask you, do you feel like there are too many Uber German units in most Eastern Front war games? I'm beginning to sort of garner the sense that despite the fact that everyone says these games are researched and this is the OB and all the rest of it, someone's still got to work out how many rifle barrels and how many tank barrels and how many artillery barrels represent one combat factor or three combat factors or whatever the case may be. And then translate that into a workable system here and make it all work together and give us an accurate feel for what was going on the battlefield at the time, regardless of what, if someone's telling me, oh, well, that particular battalion, this regiment from the 7th Panzer, it had exactly, these are all exactly the same. Every regiment in every Panzer division is exactly the same, 337. And I'm not looking for 3.25 37 or 3.75 37, because who wants to do that math, right? But I'm just curious. I know for a fact that as we have now seen some of this newer research, a lot of these games were designed before a lot of this research was released or available, that the Germans lost a lot more troops than we thought, and there were a lot less vehicles to transport guys than we thought. So some of these motorized regiments really didn't have as much motorized capability as we thought, or they'd taken larger losses, or the tank units, some of these tank units, look, here's 7th here, 977. I think that's the strongest unit on the board. That's a pretty tough unit. Help me understand if I'm going to guess, if I went and pulled out Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2 and found the 7th Division, if I could, and looked at its strength, I wonder how those two would compare, or this regiment in particular, the 25th and 7th. You know what? Oh, I'd have to pull two modules. I'd have to pull Case Blue and I know these guys get refitted as well. I have to get Case Blue and GP2 out. You guys want to hang around and wait a second? Let me just grab them. Let's have a look. Let's see. Okay, I'm back. Here we go. Let's see if we can find the 7th Division and see what that regiment is worth. I've got these kind of... Let's see if we can find... Soviets... Germans... Okay. I think everything's going to be in this guy. So... let's see if we can hunt and peck our way through this without making too much of a mess. Find my tweezers. 16th. And of course, I am, see, these are all battalions here, right? And this is a regiment. So there's the first difference, but let's see if we can just have a look. And there's 14th, 13th, 11th. This is one of the few games I've actually got relatively well organized, but that doesn't mean that it's super well organized. Motorized, 17th, 14th, 13th. I'm looking in here so I can see 10th, 6th, 7th Panzer. So it's in this thing here. Okay, let's see if we can get a feel for. It's going to be the blue striped units. And of course, this is a battalion scale, which, you know, as you think about it, man, isn't that crazy? That's crazy. All those map battalions of units. It's pretty freaking awesome. All right, let's see if I can see what we need to see here. Okay, bear with me. See if you can find some stuff. So there's a battalion, 125. This is 25. Okay. Let's see, there's 325. You see that? So, 2 battalions. We need a third, and here it is. So, it's interesting, isn't it? There's 18 combat factors in battalion scale strength versus a 9 combat strength for the 25th Regiment per se. And just to now, we can't, you know, comparing apples to apples with divisions is always difficult, you know, and these things have efficiency ratings and effectiveness ratings and all that sort of fun stuff. So it's mitigated, although these are elite just by definition. So my point here is these guys travel hundreds of miles. They paused for some level of refit at some point in late September, early October, or maybe it was mid-September. And they came back up to full strength. Did everybody come back up to full strength? I don't know. Now I know there's losses that are taken out for the OCS scenarios. So what is my point? My point is that I think I was reading something about the Army Group Center Advance that sort of went north of Moscow through Rzhev, and they faced some of the brunt of the Siberian pocket, Siberian forces that attacked. And it was Charles Sharp and Jack Rady. You know, Jack's the kind of, hey, love your writing, Jack, but you're right on one extreme edge of the political spectrum, personally, which tends to color some of my perceptions of your writing. But Charles Sharp, I don't know where he fits in the political spectrum, but he has a pretty interesting take that these forces were highly degraded. So almost to the point where if you look at that and you look at some of the other books that are around, you know, Why Hitler Lost type books, you know, some of these formations, these battalions should have been almost foot capable. So, you know, they should have been not these tank battalions, obviously, but the mechanized dudes that support these guys, like this little fella right here. So this 7th Panzer 846. Look at that sucker, 846. That is a beastie unit, right? That guy, you know, that guy arguably would have been almost equivalent to this dude in a movement of 3. So it's interesting to see or to read these new books that are coming out, see how the games have applied the history they had at the time, and compare how it all works together. And sometimes I feel like some of these formations that we're playing with are just so uber for the Germans and so soft for the Russians that it doesn't feel quite right. And that was one of the interesting things that I enjoyed about this particular evolution with Army Group Center was that the Soviets started to firm up a little bit. Now, arguably they're firming up too early, right? They're doing better than they would have historically, but at the very least, we're seeing that, and this is despite not having a lot of losses for the Germans. The Germans have just not. Right, haven't just played the game very well, but the Germans have suffered a slowdown and in a ahistorical manner that is pretty significant. We're sitting at July something. I've packed up the chart. July 1819, and we're at the point we're about to sort of get into it. We're in the Orsha. Vitebsk, Orsha sort of thread along the Dnieper River with, nothing much going on up here, right? Turn 14, we would move those forces up. I moved these guys just down in and around here, just to kind of go through the exercise of moving and seeing if I could force the river there. And if I could, then I would consider keeping on playing. But as it turned out, we had a mud turn, and the scenario really kind of petered out at that point. Mud turn, limited supply, no air support, no artillery support, so it all kind of got kind of squirrely. But anyway, so I guess I'm in two minds about this system. I enjoy the asymmetrical nature of it. It's a hard challenge for the Soviet player. It's very easy for the German player just to smash forward. You can shove infantry unit. If you can keep some infantry units or cavalry units up with and adjacent to and involved in the combats, you really do not need to worry about losses. You can just take those infantry step losses and fritter those units away and keep your armor strong and plow forward. But once you start, which you will, start pulling way ahead, pardon the heater, once you start pulling way ahead, you end up with this situation where you're going to have to accept losing forces. Now, the good news is for the German player, if he's smart, he's got 10 stacking points, and the stacking points are the black numbers here. So a typical division is going to have 7 or 8 stacking points. So if I grab all these yellow guys there, there's 2, 4, 6. I don't know where the rest of them are. They're around somewhere. But let's say there's about 6 units, 6 steps. I'm going to get to add, one of these irreplaceable AT units or, some sort of unit like this to add in to make up to 10. And I can take my step losses out of those and keep these guys relatively safe. I can lose a step for the recon guys to start with, and lose one of these if I have to, but that allows me to keep the core units pretty strong. I've rarely had to take a loss here unless there's a couple of result types that force you to take an armor loss as opposed to a mechanized loss, I believe. But so you can push, drive hard, get ahead of the supply line and do your worst against the Soviets, and I guess experience that feeling that the Germans are being way out on a limb. It's one of the reasons why I didn't move this division that's all up here all by itself, is that I didn't want to end up with it being isolated or surrounded and suffering the consequences of that situation. So anyway, 30 minutes of discussing where we're at, what we're doing, and with this game. As I said, I like it. I like the asymmetrical nature. I find the Germans easy to play. I found the Soviets hard to play, but I have a much finer appreciation for some of the subtleties of their situation and how they can trade space for time and then secure themselves enough units to actually build a somewhat solid defensive line. In this instance here, really what probably would have happened if we had continued is the Germans would have maybe taken a pause here, reorganized some divisions, put some forces into play that waited for some infantry to come up, put some heavy hitters in against some of these hexes here, and then look for the opportunity to push the armor through and head towards Smolensk, which is, whoa, wow, I'm so sorry for that zooming there. Smolensk is right there. And head for that, and head for the exit, and pick up VPs for the exits. So there you have it. All right, I was going to do a follow-on on what's next, but given that we're at 31 minutes, I feel like this might be a nice stopping point in any case, and we'll just leave it at that. And I appreciate you guys tuning in and having a look at this. So thanks very much for the time, and we'll talk to you soon. If I can work out how to stop the video.